right, Krystal, let's move on to the affordability question. Ben Shapiro was on with friends of the show, Trigonometry. I think I can say that, right? We have that relationship.
They're definitely going to watch this, by the way.
Well, it is important, of course, to watch before you react, as they reminded us. When was that? A couple of months ago?
I don't know because I didn't watch. So
That's great. Have you ever been to the Trigonometry studio? All right. You've never been. All right. Ben Shapiro was on Trigonometry and weighed in on the affordability question in a way that we thought might make for a fun little conversation here about what actually can be done, nuts and bolts, meat, potatoes, to make the country more affordable for everyone. Krystal and I will probably disagree in different directions on this, but I think we may have more agreement than we realize. Let's go ahead and roll this clip of Shapiro talking about affordability.
Affordability is not like Beetlejuice, where if you just say it over and over, it suddenly arrives. You actually have to pursue policies that are likely to alleviate an affordability problem. But if your solution is always give me more power, and it does seem like that is the solution of the day from both sides, actually, then you're likely to just continue penduluming one side to the other. Because people don't want to learn the actual lesson, which is if you actually want affordability, then either you have to change policies or change locations. Those are really the only two things. And also, I think more broadly, it's not about affordability. We have trained an entire generation of people to believe that if their lives are not what they want them to be, it's the fault of systems, as opposed to decisions that are in their own control.
I mean, I was looking around at property prices, real estate prices in New York. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I feel kind of poor looking at those things.
Oh, no, it's unaffordable. And I'm not saying it's not affordable.
Right.
It absolutely is unaffordable. If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Okay, so I absolutely hate that last part of the argument. That's probably not a surprise to anyone.
All right, good, because I was a little worried.
No, I mean, that's actually one of the arguments that I think is the least conservative and the most detestable argument to hear from conservatives, because one of the reasons I think places, New York City is not the best example of it. DC is a pretty good example of it, a very transitory city, but also San Francisco, places like that. One of the reasons that we see so much malaise in those cities is that the people who grew up and have family there can't afford it and move away. And you have people who are sort of in and out for 5 years, 10 years, don't really care that much in the way that you care about the place that you grew up, because you're part of the social fabric. You know people who know people on city council. You go to church with people, or you're in the PTA with people, or that person was your teacher. Krystal, you know this because you live this. This is like, it does make a difference no matter what you say. It makes an absolutely significant difference. It makes better communities, and communities is an important part of what lifts people into a sort of satisfying and fulfilling life. Maybe you could actually just speak to that a moment, because again, you do live that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a person who values very much place and values very much, I live and I'm raising my kids in the very same town that I grew up in. You know, my kids are in class with the kids of people that I graduated high school with, like, and went to preschool with. Yeah, I mean, literally. And, you know, wanted to be here in particular because my parents are getting older, just celebrated Dad's 90th birthday. So I wanted to be close to them, and I wanted my kids to be able to be close to them. But I love the feeling of, you know, having that connectivity to this specific place. It is, it's hard to describe the feeling, but it is a very rooted feeling. And that loss of community in our country, which has been tracked, you know, all the way going back to Bowling Alone, which is this seminal sociological study of the way that we're all sort of like coming apart, and all of that accelerated, of course, by social media and smartphones. I think it is an affirmative value that we should aspire to, that if people want to be able to live and raise kids in the places that they're from, that, you know, that's something we should value as society. And there's nowhere, I mean, on the one hand, rural areas have been decimated because of the free trade regime. So, a lot of places don't have opportunity. So people feel they have to move then to a New York City because Ben Shapiro says that, well, you go where the opportunity is. Well, where do you think the freaking opportunity is? It's places like New York City. But then you get there and you're living in a shoebox and you can't afford to make it. So it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is I think liberals have had a blind spot for that importance of place and that being an affirmative value. And then the economic elites over the past 40 years, their view has always been as they're destroying jobs in these various places, like basically big deal, creative destruction. I guess you just need to move away. So they, of course, haven't had any appreciation for the importance of community, or, they also, I think, find it easier to like control and make you and, make it so your whole life is your job if you are uprooted from a place and a community that has meaning for you. So it serves them on that end as well.
Yeah, Ryan and I were texting on Friday, and I was looking for a movie to watch, and I asked him, should I watch Bowling for Columbine and Roger and Me? Because I'm just going
Roger
through.
and Me.
I'm working through my list, and Ryan's like, "You got to watch Roger and Me." I'd never seen it before, and I'm from the Upper Midwest, outside of Milwaukee, and watching that movie, it's like a really emotional experience because you look at what happened to Flint, you look at the way the people who were in the auto industry were treated. It didn't make for, they weren't able to just like find jobs. A lot of them, you watch it, they're leaving Flint. They're leaving and going to other places. And what you take with you when you do that is this like real love for your community. And it makes worse businesses. It makes like small businesses in a local community operate differently than massive global companies, which bring with them all of the problems, by the way, that conservatives hate about global governing organizations, whether it's like the World Economic Forum or the United Nations. There's just something that is completely detached and different, and it's much easier to do mass layoffs, and conservatives will say, okay, well, that means it's much easier for you to be more efficient. But efficiency isn't the end of the economy. Nobody just believes the economy should exist only for the sake of efficiency, and I say nobody, but some people, of course, do. They're just a minority. Hardcore libertarians basically are the ones who will tell you that. So I wanted to put this chart on the screen because one of the things Ben talked about was how both sides are basically trying to consolidate power. And that has created a less affordable America. And this chart is from AEI. It gets updated like every 6 months. This is the 2022 version of it from the American Enterprise Institute. Mark Perry, who's an economist at the American Enterprise Institute. It's a little bit of an inkblot test. You can kind of look into it. You can read into it a lot of different things. Stoller and I were going back and forth about how you can read antitrust into this chart. But what you see is you look at overall inflation, and then you can see certain things that have gotten more expensive since 2000 and certain things that have gotten less expensive, so more affordable versus more expensive since 2000. And everybody knows this in their hearts. Like this chart hits you like a ton of bricks when you see college tuition just going up so high, and then TVs going down so low, 97.7% drop in the affordability of TVs. Nursery school, childcare going up, medical care services going up, college tuition, food and beverages going up. And then you see computers, software, toys, TVs, clothing, new cars roughly going down, a little blip around the COVID time period. And I think the reason that I think Ben, in a sense, is correct, this chart points to it from my perspective, is that I really do worry about subsidies in the like Mom Donnie era New York City, making things in the long term less affordable. This is a huge part of the debate we're having right now about the Affordable Care Act subsidies and Obamacare. Subsidies really can create oligopolies. Like they actually do have that effect. I think it's been pretty clear with college tuition that subsidies have created little incentive for these colleges to compete with one another on tuition price. And so I do think that should be part of the conversation. I don't know, Krystal, how you feel about it, but the question for me as a conservative is like, well, if the status quo is also miserable, which is the case with health insurance, then you can't just ask people to wait until there's some type of like comprehensive conservative market-based solution in 6 months or 6 years. People don't deserve to have their premiums spiked because the system is failing. and just like shoulder that on the promise that someday you'll do like a reform to the subsidies. Like, I don't think the subsidies are a great option right here. I don't think just subsidizing housing, freezing rent, I don't think those are good long-term options. And so I think, that's a blind spot in some ways, I think, for the progressive left. Although Mamdani is kind of interesting because he engages in the abundance conversation in an interesting way. But neither you or I are like full abundance people. But we're also.
I'm a yes and on abundance.
There we go.
Right. You got to do the abundance, but you also have to, and their focus on like you actually need to deliver, agree. But their lack of focus on you're going to have to confront capital is where that analysis falls short.
Right.
I think you're right about subsidies. And to me, though, I don't see that as progressive left. I see that as neoliberal.
Perfect. Yes.
We're going to do a tax credit and we're going to give you, Obamacare. We're going to subsidize it. Right. And look, better than nothing. Right. It's a Band-Aid, though. It's absolutely a Band-Aid. And if you're going to wait for your like conservative market-based solution, you're going to get things like a 50-year mortgage. We have left to the market instead of having our own values and priorities in the way that, for example, China has, we have said we are going to outsource our thinking and our values to the market. And all the market does is says, great, we're going to figure out how we can bilk you for all of the money that we possibly can and consolidate power and wealth among a very few people. And that's how you end up broadly with a system where the core building blocks of a middle class life, housing, healthcare, and education, are wildly unaffordable. Because we can't, as a country, say, you know what, put the profitability aside. These are things that are just basic goods and values that everyone should have access to. And we're going to do what we need to do to make sure that that is the case. So, your comment about subsidies is absolutely correct. I don't disagree with that at all. Where I would disagree is, so for example, with college education, Zoran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders wouldn't be saying that's why we need to, have a better student loan program. They'd say that's why we need free college education, free, public colleges that are free and available to everyone. On housing, they wouldn't say, that's why you need an extra tax credit for affordability. I mean, they may be on board with those sorts of things, but they would say we need more direct government building of social housing so that we can surge affordable housing into the market and don't have to wait for some developer to decide that it's in their best financial interest to do it. And by the way, when they do, they're going to build luxury high-end condos, not starter homes for young families. So, and on healthcare, obviously, they're not looking like, yes, they'll support subsidies in the short term, just so 15 million people don't lose their healthcare or whatever the number is. That's not their long-term solution, though. What they would say is Medicare for all. We have to tackle putting profit at the center of our healthcare system instead of health and care. To me, what you're pointing to is the failures of a neoliberal Democratic Party that doesn't want to confront capital, wants to deal with some problems and sees the pain and is empathetic, wants to deal with the problems, but doesn't want to confront capital. And that's where all of these weird subsidies and tax credits and, if you're this kind of business owner in this kind of town, weird, bizarre, piecemeal, non-universal programs ultimately come in. Yeah,
and I think probably where you and I have, and Sagar and I and Ryan and you have more fundamental disagreements is on, I still have a really hard time with Medicare for all and seeing that or feeling comfortable with the level of quality that a program like that would look like. The same thing with all kinds of things, public colleges, that sort of thing. But my position on Medicare for all for the last several years has been, will it be more miserable than the already miserable system that we're in? And I don't know that the answer to that is no, because this system sucks. It sucks, and it is great for people who continue to profit off of it. And that does go in both directions. I mean, the biggest enemies of capitalism, this was a common sentiment in the Gilded Age, by the way, the biggest enemies of capitalism are the capitalists. And that's how you end up with people reflexively going towards subsidy regimes because they're Band-Aids. And it's understandable that people are looking for Band-Aids when they're bleeding out. Actually, the capitalists continuing to prioritize themselves over, and let's bring this full circle, the public, their communities. Michigan's such a good example of this. Such a good example of this. You mother effing capitalists, why do you think you got Trump? You didn't want Trump. Why do you think people voted for Trump? Well, it's because of what you did to Michigan. It's because of what you did to Wisconsin. It's because of what you did to Pennsylvania. Do you think the country is healthier because of any of this? Because you pushed people to the brink of desperation, that they voted the host of Celebrity Apprentice into the presidency? No, and it's not. And there's been zero self-reflection about how their policies, whether they were subsidy band-aids or whether they were bailouts for the auto industry, whether they were complete, just treating people like widgets, and abandoning communities that had lifted them, lifted their profits and supported them and been a part of their team, and taken pride in working for Milwaukee. I'm thinking about like Master Lock, but if you're in Michigan, GM, those types of things. It just like I'm talking about it, I'm almost crying. It's just so horrible, and there's no reflection on it whatsoever from the capitalists themselves. And again, that was a common sentiment in the Gilded Age, was that the capitalists were the enemies of capitalism. But nobody wants to, even after Donald Trump gets elected and Bernie Sanders almost gets elected, nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, let me say that what was done to Michigan, what has been done to small towns and small cities, the hollowing out across the country, the deindustrialization is going to look like child's play compared to what they're planning with AI. Now, maybe AI is just a big hype in a bubble and it pops and there's, massive economic fallout and chaos, which is a horrible outcome, but doesn't end up with all human labor being replaced. But, those are basically the two directions. But their goal is to make everyone irrelevant. That is, we talk about like late stage capitalism, like that is actually their end state that they're trying to achieve. Because the whole history of labor and capital is that capital basically hates labor, wants to pay them as little as possible, work them as much as possible, like not that let them have maternity leave or paternity leave or sick leave or whatever. It's this adversarial relationship. And they would love nothing more than to make it so they don't have to deal with us at all. And the level of power and wealth that would flow to them in that scenario is just, it's beyond anything that we have even come close to seeing before in human history. That's what they're aiming for. That is the goal. And that's the market-based solution. And, I think a few of them realize like, if we're going to pull this off, we're going to have to give them like a universal basic income or throw them some crumbs something.
Yep.
But, let's be clear about what they actually want. And, I've been thinking of this. We don't have to open this whole can of worms, but I'll just put this idea out there. We can flesh it out more because I'm still fleshing it out myself. But Capital is very happy with Trump. Like they're, Wall Street CEOs are hanging out with him at the White House. They've figured out if I just bring him his gold bar in the White House, I can get whatever I want. I got my tax cut. The tariffs are now, being rolled back. And anyway, I was able to get my carve out. So it wasn't that big of a problem for me whatsoever. And the big thing that they're getting, these tech giants in particular, is off to the races on AI. They think they're going to get, whether this is, I think this is reality. They think they'll get government bailouts to backstop their losses. They think that government is going to affect it, like actively help them with their compute build out and allow them to achieve the grand dream and vision, which is to get rid of all of our, the need for any of our labor. Like that's the actual goal. Exactly. And so when you hear Shapiro talking about his classic conservative market driven solutions, that is the future that the market has in mind for us. That's the goal, is to pay us zero, employ us zero amount. Like that is the driving push. So just be aware. That's what he would advocate for. That's what he would say is fine and good and acceptable. And, we can get whatever, with our pitchforks, we can sort of extract from the trillionaires that run the show. It kind of makes, so what I was going to say with regard to the connection with immigration is, in the past, the anti-immigration position was anathema to business because they do abuse and exploit undocumented workers. There's no doubt about it. They love the cheap labor force. And they've kind of come to terms with it in Trump's second term. Because what's even better than cheap labor is no labor at all, not having to pay human beings at all. So it's part of why I feel like, you know, the focus on immigration misses the point at this point. Like, there is a great replacement theory playing out. It's these tech oligarchs who literally are telling you they want to replace you with a robot. That's the big battle that's going on right now. And, you know, I hope, and we've been covering closely on the show, I hope there is a cross-ideological coalition that is able to come together to push back forcefully on that view, because it is genuinely existential.
I mean, it's easy to be blackpilled on the right, because during the kind of peak woke era is when you saw people in the Republican Party saying, we're done with the Chamber of Commerce and we're creating our own Chamber of Commerce. You know, these capitalists are... Marco Rubio gave this entire speech at Catholic University. That was a wonderful piece of theology and politics, where he's talking about the ends of markets are not efficiency. The ends are families and community. Like, that is why markets don't exist for the sake of efficiency. They exist because we create them via our democracy in order to have strong, prosperous families that can flourish, and communities that can flourish, and people that can flourish. And that's like obviously true, but that is not what the tech giants believe. And the tech giants, some of them might have these like sincere libertarian positions that I think are insane, but they may like genuinely believe that UBI is, you know, the peak version of humanity. But it's not a conservative belief. It might be a libertarian belief. It's definitely not a conservative belief. And that's what... I think you're so right, Krystal. Like, that's where this is all heading. Is the UBI Band-Aid is going to be applied in ways that's like, all right, sorry, humans, you guys can't do this as well as our LLMs and our LLMs inside our robots. So just be content with this, you know, $2,000 a month or whatever it is, and you know, get in your autonomous vehicle, and that's where it's going. And it's exactly what we were talking about, which is when you don't actually want to do the hard work of having a well-regulated market. Very hard work to do, because you're swamped by lobbyists all of the time to create a market that is in their direction, one way or the other. Subsidies can be a tool towards that, but also so can deregulation. So that's much harder work, to have a fair market and a place where people actually can, you know, create small businesses, where they can have meaningful lives and thrive through the dignity of work. Nope, we're just going to get UBI. It's easy.
Yeah. UBI and no Epstein files, Emily.
That's the name of your next book. Well, we do a breaking Epstein news to get to. So let's go ahead and move on to that story. Congressman Ro Khanna is going to join us in just a bit.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.